Absolutely.
Is this on? Yes. Is it? All right, we're going to give the meeting just a couple more minutes because the door was shut and people are still checking in, and we're just waiting for one more guest to arrive.
Well, that's nice. I like the end. You know, right? Like you said.
Are we going on? Are we? Wow.
Oh, I just needed this for our guidance. I think I've seen all the backup.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
Making sure we got it all.
I just needed this.
Okay. Making sure.
Okay, Karen, I think we're ready.
I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order of August 24th, 2021. Tom Chapa,
Here.
Heather Del Conte,
Here.
Pamela Dowd,
Here.
Lisa Glidden,
Here.
James McKenzie,
Here.
Sean Ahmed,
Here.
Linda Sereno, here, Zachary DeMont. Zachary?
Welcome.
You don't have to sign in, Zachary. It's okay. That's for the public,
Thank you, Lisa.
floor to the public.
All right,
Zachary, you're right over here.
as Zach
by
gets
Nancy.
comfortable, I just want to remind everyone that it is a mandate to be a part of this meeting to wear your mask. So please have your masks on throughout the duration of the meeting for everyone's safety. Thank you.
At this time, if everybody would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Good evening, Board. Before we get into the meeting, a couple of things. I think first, I wanted to share an apology. My understanding is there's a mix-up in terms of the doors where people were coming in. The meeting agenda did say meet at the front main doors. Thank you for your patience, and again, we apologize, our sincere apologies. Second, I'd like to just share with the Board two people who just came to say hi, and one I know has to go. They are our SRO officers for this year. Mr. Robert Bechtel, can you just stand and wave at us and say hi to everybody? Okay, great. Okay. And Mr. Jeff Goodrow. Nice to meet you as well, Jeff. Thank you very much. And they'll be in our schools this year helping and supporting our program. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
On behalf of the board, we'd like to just extend our sincere welcome, and we're just so happy to have you with us.
Now we'll move to the floor to the public session of the Board of Education meeting. It is expected that speakers will conduct themselves in a civil manner and will be ruled out of order for any statement that constitutes a direct threat against officers, employees, or students of the school district, or that is obscene. No personal attacks will be tolerated. nor should any speaker address specific district personnel or students by name or suggestions. Questions or comments concerning matters that are not on the agenda will be taken under consideration and referred to the superintendent for appropriate action. Members of the community may comment on any matter related to the district business. The board president may request a brief description of the topic the speaker plans to address. Any group or organization wishing to address the board must identify a single spokesperson. Presentation should be as brief as possible, and no speaker will be permitted to speak for longer than 3 minutes. I will read the ones that I received.
Can you just pull the microphone closer to you, Karen, so we can
Closer?
hear it? Thanks.
I'll read the online submissions first. Katrina Godisi, what is the district, 387 West Fifth Street. What is the district's board stance on removing the requirement for children to wear masks whether vaccinated or not? If your stance is to remove the requirement completely, what are you doing to ensure that they won't have to wear masks, one, all day? Second one, Cora Linhart, 607 Queen Drive. With the increase of COVID-19 affecting children under 12 and at this time not able to get vaccinated, will masks be required for students and teachers while in the schools? As a retired healthcare worker and a dental hygienist, I wore a mask while working on all patients over 30 years. This was a time when we had no health issues like now. I have a granddaughter 9 years old with asthma and compromise. My concern is how will she be comfortable and guaranteed to be safe in school? I understand you are under pressure from parents feeling children should not have to wear masks. How do we know those family members have been fully vaccinated, and will you have all school children COVID checked prior being admitted to school? Too many unanswered questions and honest health concerns truly need to be addressed. Joshua Dean, 21 Rise Drive. I would like to speak at the next school board meeting. How do I get to speak at the meeting? I would like to speak on the mask mandate and COVID. Tiffany Graves, 31 Maiden Lane Road. Why do parents have no say in remote learning for safety and health during a pandemic? So I have to jump through hoops to get a note for only one child with asthma, but my other two don't have a medical note. Makes no sense to send other 2 children to school just to bring it home to the one with underlying health conditions. Please reconsider and put remote learning in for some of these parents who do not want to send their children back to school yet. I'll probably have to homeschool because of the guidance that has been issued. Samantha Bomer, 222 Liberty Street. With a higher rate of COVID since the last update, masks must be mandated. Imagine all kids unable to attend school in person since March 16, 2020. It's their turn to see what inside school is like. If that's wearing a mask, my kids are 100% okay. Mickey Thompson, 19 Kathleen Drive. How can we even think about sending our children back to school when our local positivity rates are so high? I really don't understand. Our numbers are higher than they were back when we locked down in March of 2020. Please explain. I do not want to send my 11-year-old back to school until she receives her vaccine. Efran Rodriguez, 5350 State Route 104. Why hasn't the district considered bringing vaccinated children back full-time and the unvaccinated stay virtual, and have proof be shown that they are in fact vaccinated? Myself and my wife think there are a lot of parents out there who feel like we do. This pandemic is scary, and I feel if all kids are back at school, this is going to stay at high numbers of cases starting again. Steve Lamont, 325 East 9th Street. Why aren't we offered virtual learning for students who did well in the learning environment? I have a son who never made honor roll until last year. He loved every moment of that experience. But he struggles in a normal classroom. I believe there are more students who benefited from virtual learning. I strongly think our district should offer this type of learning for any student who can and would benefit. Amelia Loomis, 164 East 13th Street. Why is there not an option for all virtual like last year? Both my boys are nervous to go back in person considering the Delta variant. My whole family is vaccinated. My eldest was highest honors all year, and my youngest is learning disabled, and he had the highest grades he ever had, especially considering he was a freshman. They both excelled mentally and physically last year. Tiffany Graves, 31 Maiden Lane Road. I don't feel safe sending my children into school and definitely don't agree with how there is no social distancing on the bus. I request and beg that you give parents the choice on health and safety of their own children by giving remote learning options. A lot of people will be doing homeschooling due to no remote learning option. I hope you will reconsider it for the parents who want all of their kids to have remote learning instead of just the kids with a medical no. The cases are high and not improving. I don't see how you figure it is safe for all to go back 5 days a week on a full bus with no social distancing. It feels like it is more about money than health and safety. My kids are my world, and I'm looking to keep them safe and healthy. Hopefully, you'll give parents the choice of their own children. Audrey Scruton, 2080 West 5th Street. Remote learning should be an option. Megan Lamont, 325 East 9th Street. As a parent of a child to excel like he has never done before while doing virtual learning, I feel children like him should be offered the choice to continue the virtual learning. He ended up on the highest honor, which was never happened before. Colleen Ward, 29 Murray Street. I am immune compromised. I have several autoimmune diseases. I take immune suppressants and often steroids. My son needs minimal classes to graduate, and I would feel it's so much better, so much more comfortable with him to be able to resume remote learning in light of this new Delta variant. I struggle so, and the quality of my life is so diminished. I truly fear for my health. Please take into consideration that some families would greatly benefit from remote learning. Hoping you also make it an option for all, I probably would help with the mask mandate issue as well, which I am all for. But if they don't want to mask, they can learn from home. It would be a great option. Angela Cross, 229 West 4th Street. Why is a virtual option not being offered for those who are not comfortable with sending their kids to school? We do not want to send our kids to in-person until the cases drop back down. But at this point, homeschooling and coming up with a curriculum for a 7th and 9th grader on top of working full-time and preparing to move into a new home is just a bit overwhelming. Not to mention how thorough is the mask mandate and social distancing going to be enforced. Will kids be sent home if they refuse to wear a mask? What about the amount of students in the halls between classes? How can they social distance in the halls? Please reconsider a virtual option for those of us who are not comfortable with this current plan. What are we paying school taxes for if we, as parents, have no options? Next, I will go to the in-person. If Dr. Peter Newell for Elizabeth Street.
Hi. Thank you all for your letting me speak. I just wanted to say I wanted to thank the school board for following the CDC guidelines and opening with fully masked students all in person. I understand the concerns of the families some of whom we heard from there, but overall studies show that there was a big negative impact of online learning to a large number of kids nationwide, and the American Academy of Pediatrics also recommends fully in-person learning, fully masked. So thank you for following the scientific and the guidelines of these civil servants who developed these. So appreciate you following those guidelines, and obviously with the Delta variant and other things changing, there will be changes, and we all need to be prepared for that and look to those trusted sources for the best advice as to how to adapt. So thank you.
Next is Frank Carbone, 58 Deer Ridge.
Thank you for having me speak here. I've been a pharmacist 52 years, retired now. As a pharmacist, every medication that was presented by the FDA for use had one of these package inserts in. You can see all the information that's available on here. Just a brief outline of some of the information on here. Indications and uses, dosage and administration, dosage form and strength, contraindications, warning and precautions, adverse reactions, use in specific people, like use in pregnancy, lactation, pediatric use, geriatric use, renal impairment, hepatitis, clinical pharmacology, mechanism of action, clinical studies, cardiovascular events, hypolipidemia events, how supplied, storage, handling, and patient counseling information. All on this here. That vaccine was released. I didn't see one iota of this information presented to any of the public. They only told you might get a fever, you might get a sore arm, vague stuff. There's a VAERS report that shows the deaths, 13,068. This is as of June. Office visits, 17,228. ER reports, 98,760. Emergency room doctors, 72,643. Hospitalized, 53,979. Recovered, 197,913. Birth defects, 376. Life-threatening events, 13,811. As of the week of July 1st, data from 12-year-olds to 17-year-olds, 1,018 serious events, 18 deaths, 2 by suicide. Most recently, these are children, 15 years old, all have VAERS ID numbers, which are overseen by the CDC. 13-year-old girls suffered heart attack conditions, receiving first dose of Pfizer. 13-year-old boy died after Moderna
30
vaccine.
seconds.
15-year-old died also of cardiac arrest. 3 of them. 16-year-old vaccinated after the first dose, serious events. 3 17-year-olds, serious events. 2,525 anaphylaxis from 12-year-olds to 17-year-olds. This is not only a warning because they're going to mandate, I know they are, they're going to mandate vaccines.
Your
They are
time is
mandating
exceeded.
vaccines. Thank you.
Next is Therese Carbone, 58 Deer Bridge.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to continue with what my husband was talking about. All right, this information is this week, 21% deaths with, this is the results of, this is the CDC reports, and many of these events are not reported. I mean, this is just the ones that are reported. 21% deaths of cardiac disorders, 54% were males, 43 were females, 2,947 pregnant women had adverse reactions, 960 miscarriages, 2,607 Bell's palsy, 552 Guillain-Barré syndrome, 8,336 blood clots. Actually, there's no director of the Pfizer was approved by FDA, but FDA still doesn't have a director. Let's see. What else has he got here? The children, no, this is the first one, third, fourth. I'm trying to read his writing. Today, you cannot see the federal government or you cannot sue the federal government or manufacturers of the shot for any adverse reaction or death. When there was a disclaimer, no liability, these companies produce this vaccine, and there's no way you can sue them if somebody has an adverse reaction or somebody dies. What does that tell you? They claim no liability for any adverse reactions. All these adverse reactions occurred while the vaccine is still in the experimental stage, and there's still no information regarding long-term effectiveness. What happens now that Pfizer has been approved? You know, we hear nothing about the treatment. We hear nothing about research that should go into treatment of patients. We don't hear about the number of recoveries. We hear all these alarming numbers of people that are hospitalized. How many went home? how many recovered. You don't hear the recoveries. All you can do is all we can do now is expect more new variants, more boosters that'll take about 3 months to develop, and this is so questionable. These vaccines, I mean, I pray everyone that received it is safe, but obviously they're all not, and everybody needs to be aware of that. Thank you.
Next is Mike DeHar, 798 Middle Road.
Thank you. I'm more here to make an appeal. I was here last week and had mentioned about no one knows the long-term effects, but they do know the nanoparticles end up in girls' ovaries and in bone marrow, and that's alarming. My information comes from Dr. McAuliffe, who's the chief internal medicine and cardiologist. And back in March, before a Senate hearing committee, he had mentioned the following. People who develop COVID have complete and durable immunity. Very important principle, complete and durable. You can't beat natural immunity. You can't vaccinate on top of it and make it better. There is no scientific, clinical, or safety rationale for ever vaccinating a recovered COVID patient. There's no rationale for testing a recovered COVID patient. The reason why I want to point that out is because when it comes to mandates and universal type medicine, it really creates problems. Here's an article of a 17-year-old boy who had COVID, wanted to play soccer in his local high school, but had to get a vaccine. He did not need the vaccine. And as a result, he now has a heart condition that I don't know if he's going to recover from it. Now, the CDC, which is heavily invested in vaccines, as long as the NIH, they have no liability. So I can only appeal to the community to say, you need to take time and understand what's going on. I also pointed out last week that children 0 to 18 years of age are 99.997 recovery. Their natural immunity is a godsend and a God gift to us, to all of us. To vaccinate them for short-term and or long-term makes no sense. People are scared to death because they don't follow the science, and that's what Dr. Peter McAuliffe says. And I'm begging you, I would spend any kind of time with any one of you. I'm a 41-year engineer, and I'm also an elder in a local church. And I can take you through the science. I can take you through the data. I can demonstrate to you that we need to pause on this because everybody is passing the buck. The CDC is off the hook, and they pass it on down, on down, on down. It's our community. These are our children. I am making a sincere appeal. I mean, it's devastating, and they cover this stuff up. And I just want you to know that out of the 1,800 reports of anaphylaxis,
Your time is expired.
99% of it is from the Pfizer. The Pfizer vaccine is the worst of all of them, and the data shows this. Please. My name is Mike DeHar. Please call me up. Let's go out for coffee. Let me show you what I have. Thank you very much.
Next is Sally Glennon, 157 East 3rd Street.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sally Glennon, as she spoke. I ran for this board because I haven't got all the statistics that everybody just went through, but I got a heart for children. And I think it's a travesty what's going on with these masks that don't work, and these shots that make our kids sick. And I'm a born-again believer. So my mandate is to follow what God wants for us, for all of us. I don't care who you want to serve, but you're going to have to serve somebody someday. And the fact that we're still walking around with these silly things on is, and some people are just tremendously fearful. And it's because of our media and what's pumped into these kids and adults. And I have a problem with it. I had 4 kids through this district. And I always supported the school and the teachers and the leaders. But I'm shocked at what's going on. I really am. That's why I wanted to be on this board. I wanted to have a vote for our children, not what CDC says or anyone else. Because as Frank and Terry Carbone got up and spoke, he was a pharmacist, she was a nurse. They show that when a drug or shot doesn't work, it takes 30 to 100 problems to close that shot down. And in the UK, they have closed these shots down. They've temporarily suspended them. So why in America aren't we waking up to what's real, what is needed for our kids? We're losing precious education time. We've lost it. I'm glad we're doing 5 days a week. I'm thankful for that. But I don't, honestly, you're responsible also for this critical race theory. Why do we want to teach our kids to hate one another? We got enough of that. And the equity, supposedly, that's another thing you're pushing through here. Equity is really inequity, and it shouldn't be. And I know I'm step on toes. I'm sorry, but
30 seconds.
I believe that we need to stand up to the nonsense. Why aren't we standing up to the nonsense? That's my question to you guys. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Next is Sarah Van Patten, 245 West 6th Street.
Hello. So I'm talking about the mask mandates. I believe that, we have enough data after 18 months to end this now. The virus is behaving much like any other virus that has entered this world. Our world will not be without sickness or death or pain to infer that we can play God and control life and death by the hands of an elect few by destroying lives, the mental health, businesses, uprooting children from their schools into potentially dangerous and neglectful home situations. The school mask mandates are one of the many examples of unnecessary restriction to the Oswego County, residents of Oswego County. Children are at the least at risk of hospitalization or death from COVID-19, and they need to be breathing fresh air. We should not be asked by establishments to don a medical device, the mask, nor should we be harassed, bullied, or stalked. This needs to be parental choice. Implied consent is not informed consent. The risks are that I or my children might get sick. COVID-19 is proving itself not to be as severe as the full name suggests. The risk of death is low, and I have some data on that. It's like 0.079%. In Oswego County, the deaths confirmed as of the most recent data. The risk of death is low, and the survival rate is way too high to justify a medical fear-mongering prop that is ineffective in everyday, non-medical scenarios. The benefits of my not wearing a mask is that my children can see my face, my smile. They can also talk to me and hear me. What are they doing about people who have hearing problems? What kind of accommodations are they doing for the hard of hearing in schools? Are they
30
wearing
seconds
a clear
remaining.
mask? I do not base my decisions in fear-mongering propaganda or by people who are not in charge of my individual and my family's health. Remove yourself from my medical care, my family's medical care, by taking a stand against medical coercion and forced mandates now. I do not consent. Thank you for listening.
Next, I have Beth Therrett.
I think she was just signing up.
Oh, okay. And that's all I have for you today. If we can move to the Board of Education, there is one item, the memorandum of agreement between Oswego City School District and the CSEA, that the Board of Education approved the memorandum of agreement between the two. Could I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Just wanted to share with the board that the results of the vote just came in minutes before the meeting. Over 99%, only one no, and everybody else yay for the CSEA agreement.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, I will turn the meeting over to Dr. Kelvin for the superintendent's report.
Good evening, board. If okay with you all, I would like to come out here again, as I did last week, to talk with the whole group. And tonight I have Dr. Morgan, who's here to share with us. Dr. Morgan, if you can come and join us, please. Yes. All right, board. Thank you for your patience. Just a couple of things to start out with. First of all, the district we are continuing to move forward with our planning. I'll tell you that we are working very diligently to make sure that we're ready for the beginning of this school year. Our summer programs ended last week. We had some really great outcomes for kids. In our future board meeting, we'd like to bring back some data and share with you where children started and where they ended in terms of the summer. I think you'll be very pleased with some of the progress that we saw for our students over our 30-day programs. We are, as I said, continuing to plan for the 2021 to 2022 school year. We have, as you know, done some surveying of our parents to see, where parents are with respect to transportation. We've heard from over 1,000 parents who have shared with us a variety of things. Many are going to allow their children to ride on the bus. And I believe we had about 250, maybe a little bit more than that, who said, this year I'm going to drop my kid off. And so we said, okay, that's fine. We have received information from the public around medical accommodations. At this point in time, at the elementary level, correct me if I'm wrong, we have about 8. It was 14, but it's down to 8 parents who are asking for additional accommodations so that they would get remote learning or virtual learning, whatever, or tutorial services. At the secondary level, I want to make sure I have the right number. That number was 1 at middle school and 6 at the high school. So we're looking at 7 total at the high school, 8 at the elementary level who at this point in time have asked for medical accommodations to support their children for the next year. I'd like to also share with you that yesterday we held our stakeholder meeting, had quite a few people on with us from all over the district. We shared the information that you received last week and our plan at this time. After sharing the plan, we heard some good feedback from our community. For the most part, what we heard from people is that they're in very strong support of the plan. Most said that they were really excited about being able to be back 5 days a week in person. People were just really excited to hear that. We did hear some questions. One of the biggest areas that people had questions about was lockers, if I remember correctly. Could we, consider, once we get started, trying to allow kids to go back to use their lockers? Right now, our goal is try to get them in, get them started, get used to routines. We want to be careful not to have gatherings in hallways, so we've kind of just said right now we'll hold off on some of the lockers. We did have some questions from teachers just in terms of operations. When kiddos are quarantined, they wanted to make sure that they'd have enough time to be able to get situated. So sometimes we learn overnight that there's a quarantine that's going to happen the next day or that night, and sometimes teachers may not get it until they open their emails that next morning. So they just want some time to kind of make sure that they're ready and they can get everything situated online to support those children. And I think pretty much that was, for the most part, it. Yes, go ahead.
I just had a question about the medical accommodations, the numbers. Did that include just people who strictly got notes from their doctor for the child, or does it also include those issues that we heard about in public session as well, where there's someone in the home?
Includes both. We originally had some bigger numbers than those that were quoted tonight. And when we went through them and started to contact parents to see who needed what, and do you have documentation or no, or what we found out was that a lot of our parents filled in the survey thinking that if they needed no accommodations, that they had to still put their names in and write no accommodation, or just not write anything in the area. And so once we contacted and kept going down the line, we heard, we really were able to solidify who needed what. I know that there's a couple conversations still tomorrow that's happening with a couple principals, some of the parents, but that's where we certainly are at this point in time. And we did send that survey out multiple times just to make sure that parents had time to give us feedback and give us information. If we hear more, we will certainly share that out with the board. Does that help to answer questions? I think it answered the question, okay. So that's where we're at right now in terms of feedback from our stakeholders. At our last meeting, we talked a little bit about Dr. Morgan, and he is here this evening. And I'm going to let him share a little bit about the Delta variant, and then the need to make sure that we are ensuring mitigating strategies. Those are some of the mitigating strategies are a part of our return to school plan. What we want to do is get everyone back 5 days a week. And so to do that, we certainly are going to ensure the mitigating strategies to protect and ensure the health and safety of students. I want to talk a little bit about COVID-19, what you're seeing in the area around Delta variant, and then the need for these strategies. Sure. Just turn that mic on the top. There you go.
Okay. Can you hear me with this?
No. Try. Nope. Flip it up again. Matt's got to turn it up. Okay, go ahead, talk into the mic.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear? Barely. Try again.
Not working. Not working. For some reason.
Give him Mathis's mic, maybe?
Test, test, test. That's right.
Darn whiteys.
It's always the challenge.
Test, there we go, okay. All right, now we have some sound. So I want to talk about a few things. A lot has happened and changed over the last year and a half. We have learned a tremendous amount of information about COVID-19. It's hard to call it novel COVID-19 like we had to last year because we have learned so much. What I'm going to talk about a little bit is going to be based on, again, science. Everybody quotes different science. I think the CDC, the American Academy of Family Practice, the American Academy of Pediatrics, these three groups are very important when we talk about schools. We did not have enough information. We didn't have any immunizations, so that we are very concerned about the spread last time. We now have more tools in our toolbox, and luckily vaccinations have been used as much as they are. I think they need to be used more. But we are getting more variants, and the Delta variant has been shown to be about 1,000 times as contagious as the original variant. They got worse as we went along. There was the original, there was UK, there was Brazil, there was South Africa, there was India, and now there's Delta, and there's even concerns about another one coming called Lambda. And we know that they're going up, and we know that as many things we tried to do last year nationwide, there were a lot of serious drawbacks by not being in school. The mental health of young people was tremendously affected. And even when people were doing the best they could to keep the food programs going, they did not reach the same, so nutrition was down. I mean, last year was the first year for almost 50 years that life expectancy went down in this country. And it was specifically because of COVID and the effects that it had. We've had over 630,000 dead Americans from this. We have given over 350 million vaccines. And have there been some reactions? Yes, there have been. And they've even had some pauses to look at this. We have an open policy for people to look at when there's a problem. I don't think they can say the same thing in China or Russia. Here we do, the FDA does have a policy to look at it. So for the American Academy of Pediatrics, for the American Academy of Family Practice, for CDC, and I believe the American Academy of Internists as well, to recommend these vaccinations, this isn't a light thing. This is something based on science. I've been a physician here for 38 years. I have seen many infections. I'm glad I was born in an age when I got a measles vaccine and I got a polio vaccine, because these used to kill a tremendous amount of young people. We were doing very well. We were getting a lot of people vaccinated. The numbers were going down. And then all of a sudden we started to come back in. This summer, people were going back to camps with young kids not immunized, because there's no indication yet for under 12. I wanted to get I got the most recent data from the county today. The most vaccinated group of people, as expected, would be 65 and older, where it seems to be the least is 19 to 34-year-olds. About 1/3 of the 12 to 18-year-olds in our county are vaccinated as of today. I got this morning from the county. We're comparing where we were in November, December last year, which was not a good place, which is our pre-vaccination time. We found that the percentage of positive COVID-19 in 65 and older is down almost 46%. It's also reduced, about 13% in 35 to the 64-year-old group. But again, some of those people have not been getting the vaccines as well. Of concern is the number of cases that we're having is going way up. 28% in 19 to 34-year-olds, 23% in 12 to 18-year-olds, almost 90% for 5 to 11-year-olds, and over 205% in 0 to age 4. So the numbers are going up, and they're almost exclusively 97% now is from the Delta version. A very important.
Can I just ask one quick clarifying question? Are those statistics are the increase from December of last year to now?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
That's what I said in the beginning,
Right.
compared to November, December. Okay. One of the most important statistics right now are the people who are dying in this country. And this isn't just in the United States. This is around the world. All right, it is not just a United States problem. But 97.5% of the people who are dying were not vaccinated. Not vaccinated. So what we need to do, we need to improve mental health in the kids. We need to improve the educational process. There were some people, and I had some patients, who did benefit last year in certain situations. There were definitely some kids who did better in the remote thing. And I understand parents thinking that. But that was a small percentage. There were many, many more that did not. And again, those other statistics I said in the beginning showed where all these organizations are recommending getting the kids back. So we need to get them back in the 5 days a week, and I don't think many people disagree with that, so we have to figure out the safest way to do it, all right? The studies and the science clearly show the best ways to get vaccinations there. And that means not just for the kids, but the people who are working with the kids. You know, we need a higher percentage of teachers and everybody else. We need a higher percentage in healthcare, military, and a number of, yes, there are people who are doing mandates for certain jobs, but there's no question that the chance of dying dramatically reduces with the vaccine. That's when 97.5% of the people dying, and these are younger people now too. The admissions of 20 to 40-year-olds, 45-year-olds is significantly higher. We are getting children under 10 also dying from this. Are kids better? Yes, they are. There's no question about it. And luckily, young kids do seem to do well. My only grandchild had COVID at 7 months because he needed to be in daycare. I happened to be there when he was diagnosed so I could help him things, and it's scary, and luckily he's a younger person and he did okay. 2 out of my 4 adult kids and their spouses have it. My son has had COVID pneumonia in Toronto. I think that it's a terrible way to die, and it's killing a number of people. So we want to get kids back to school. We have to figure out the best way to do it. And the best way to do it is to decrease the risk of infection. Last year we had 6 feet of separation. They did some studies, maybe 3 is better, with the teachers being 6 feet apart. Are masks perfect? Absolutely not. Are some masks better than others? Yes. N95s are very difficult to breathe through. Medical masks are around 50 to 60% effective. Cloth ones are down in the 20 to 30%. Bandanas are almost worthless because you can breathe right through them. But even if they help reduce infection, let's average them all together 40%. That's still a reduction of infection. And that's what we're looking here. We want to reduce infection. And something as simple as wearing a mask is the way to do it until we get a larger proportion of the people vaccinated. That's how we're going to beat this. The way these strains get worse and worse is every time they replicate, it increases the chance of a mutation. The way to decrease replication is to decrease the number of people that can get infected and pass it on to somebody else. The trouble is with the flu, one person may infect 3 or 4 other people. They've seen with the Delta version that one person may infect 100 people, and that's where the numbers go. It's easy math. It's very easy math. Yes?
Just a quick point of clarification too, though. Can't a vaccinated person still carry the virus and still transmit it?
They can, and we are seeing some breakthrough. The Delta virus is not protecting against the disease entirely, but what it is dramatically reducing is hospitalization and death. I think what a vaccine ought to do is prevent hospitalization and prevent death. The flu vaccine that we've been using for years has never been much better than 55% preventing flu. But if you get the flu, you tend to be less sick.
But I guess in terms of reducing transmission rates, the vaccine is not helping with that.
No, that's not true. Some of the studies are showing your ability to transmit is also reduced if you've been vaccinated. Okay? It's not a perfect thing, and I don't want people to think vaccination is. But it's the best tool we have in the toolbox right now. And I come back to that 97.5% of the people dying are not vaccinated. That's a serious number. And what that number tells us is vaccination is the best thing we have at this time. We already saw down south where they had much lower rates of vaccination. That's where the surge of the Delta virus is. So where places where they were actually outlawed of having masks on, which just baffles my mind. We really have seen a tremendous surge, and the majority of them are in the southern and western states where they did not have as high of a vaccination rate. The medical system is stretched to its limit right now. It's year and a half is making it exceptionally difficult for staffing. and it's only going to get worse if we don't get ahead of it. So I think after many discussions, and we went through a lot, this was never easy. We discussed many things, had many meetings last year, hours and hours. What can we do, what can we not do? We didn't do sports in the beginning, we did some later. Contact testing, and we've improved our capabilities with testing. Now, there are not as many centers because the numbers went way down in May and June. It was a nice thing. People were outside. But then people started congregating again, and people went into camps, and a large number of people not vaccinated, and all of a sudden the numbers started going up. They start school much sooner down south. And the schools where they have no mask mandate, some of them are closed after a week because they literally had thousands of kids affected. That's not, we want to do the best we can to make it safe. We want to do the best we can so that we can get everybody back, so that they can be educated, so they can get the socialization, so they can get the lunch programs, so they can be more like kids. And I think we all want that. If we can get all the staff vaccinated, if we can get the kids 12 and above vaccinated, we don't have an indication. It's much more complicated under 12 because you have to pick an ideal dose. It's based a little bit on weight. Everybody 12 and above, it's the same dose. It's not a different dose. And that's why it's taking longer. The actual process of doing a study is much more complicated. Now, I'm not an epidemiologist, and that's really what we need to speak to that, but that's why it's taking longer. We are hopeful by the end of October to have data down to age 5. And that's great, but I think it's going to be January or February before we have it down to 9 months. And we have to wait and see what the studies show. The preliminary studies are looking promising, but they're just preliminary, so you can't base anything based on that. So if we bring people back, if we have everybody wear a mask, because it is not a difficult thing. In my line of work, I have to wear a mask and a shield. I wear it 12 hours a day. And I'm loving having pimples on my forehead like I had when I was a teenager. But you can do it. It's not hard. Is it a nuisance? You're damn right. Pardon my French. It's a nuisance, but it's easy to do. It is not difficult to do, and it's not an infringement. It's like putting my seatbelt on. It's like never yelling fire in a building. It's common sense is what it is. But if people are vaccinated, who should be, if people wear a mask, if we wash our hands, we now know that we don't have to scrub everything down 87 times because it's not being spread that way. Should we not clean things? Yes, we should still clean things. Should we still wash our hands? Do you realize last year we had a 94% reduction of flu in this country? And the reason why? More people got the vaccine, but people were wearing a mask and washing their hands. What a novel idea. Let's wash our hands and maybe wear a mask in December, January, and February during flu season and reduce it 94%. Before this COVID, we had an average of 35,000 dead Americans every year from the flu. Not a small number compared to 630,000, but still not a small number. But if we wash our hands, we wear our mask, we try to keep the teachers and the students 6 feet apart, but the students only 3 feet apart. And
encourage people to stay home.
Encourage people to keep that distance. The reason they ask about the lockers, people congregate at lockers. It's just something that happens. Discussions have been made, how many people can we really put on the bus? And we want to not pack them on the bus, but there's a shortage of bus drivers. There's things that make it difficult that way. But if we all do this together, if we keep track of cases, the county is ready to keep track of cases. We can test people. We have to reevaluate. We're hoping the school districts in the area are talking about doing sports, but they're going to wear a mask. Over 12, you can be vaccinated. I encourage people to be vaccinated.
So if I can just, So in terms of time, so I think the first thing that is the recommendations that people do mask, that they continue those mitigating strategies of hand washing, social distancing, and also the other piece is keeping people staying home when
you're
they're
sick.
ill, making sure people stay home.
When you're sick, you shouldn't be working, and you shouldn't go and infect other people. I know nobody, it's difficult for childcare. It's difficult. Some employers are not very receptive to saying, I'm sick. Getting tested, I'm hoping we ramp up testing in the county for the fall when the numbers, they're already going up. We're in a red zone, but it's the absolute numbers are not as bad yet, but the percentage of increase is what's very scary. So if we can get the testing going, and I know Oswego Health is working on that, to make that possible. But we're seeing an increase right now at my own office. So, but these are things that we can do, and they're not difficult if we all do them together.
So, point of order.
I'm sorry, public session is over. So if you have a question, you can submit it to our hotline that's online.
Okay.
And someone will definitely get back to you.
So, with respect to the planning for this year, Dr. Morgan and I met just the other day, and we were talking a little bit through, again, our plan, just to make sure we're all good. But the main part that we were talking about is the part that we left off with at our last meeting, and that was the athletic portion. And we wanted to talk a little bit about that today. So there is some guidance that has come out from the CDC. These are recommendations around testing. And then there's guidance that came in from the state ed department around what do we do with athletics. And we kind of just talked through that. We looked at what's happening in the region and thought, if we were to offer athletics, how might we do it? And so there are some revisions today that Dr. Morgan and I talked about to, our athletic piece that we want to talk through with you. The association has determined that all interscholastic sports teams will be practicing and having their contests this year at this time. However, whatever is happening will be evaluated consistently and ongoing, right? Because we don't know what things are going to look like a month from now, 2 months from now, a week from now. And so at any time, if health conditions worsen or we just start to see infections or transmissions or things get worse, we know that we would need to come back to the table and really take a look at what we're doing and change some things. So we talked a little bit, and we have some revisions that we'd like to share with you in terms of recommendations with our plan. This is the 13th consideration here that we, in the series of things we talked about with you last week. And by the way, we do have a copy of the PowerPoint on the table if you don't have it. Just want to make sure everybody has it so they can see it. So the first consideration that we discussed was, allowing for the district to offer athletics, offer practice and contests at this time with the following understandings. So the first piece is that the district, we would work closely with our medical director, Dr. Morgan, and also the county health department to monitor health conditions, including those of our athletes, community transmission rates, contact tracing concerns, and determine whether high-risk sports should be offered, especially high-risk sports is the ones we're most concerned about, or discontinued. And this is really kind of like a case-by-case piece. So why would that be the case? So some people would say, what's going to be the impetus to stop sports, right? High-risk sports or non-high-risk sports. Is it one case? Well, it's difficult to say it would be one case, right? Because you have to kind of go back through the whole contact tracing piece. A child can be, COVID-19 positive, but they may not have been in school when the positivity happened, but they're on a team, right? So that case necessarily would not shut down the whole team. You could have another situation where a child has been positive, but they are around, 3 or 4 children who are all vaccinated. None of those children are showing any difficulties. And there is a toolkit that the state has put out that we have to follow around contact tracing. And depending on what the circumstance is, some children may not be actually quarantined because they are vaccinated and because of some of the things that they're demonstrating characteristics. So in that case, would we shut down sports, right? It really depends. All of these things come into play. You may have a case where a child is positive, and then we see other children with symptoms or other children who needed to be quarantined. There's issues going on there. That might be the impetus to say, okay, we need to take a break, we need to stop. We need to quarantine. We need to stop possibly the entire sport for a while because of what's going on. So each case is very different. It's difficult to put in a one parameter. And we've kind of, that's the way it's been all year with COVID-19, with even in our classrooms, like when do we shut down a classroom? When do we shut down a school? It is very difficult to give a one kind of scenario there. But what we would be doing if we allow for the sports, especially the high-risk sports, we would be consulting consistently on an ongoing basis and looking at everything case by case every single week. If we were to allow for sports, the district would promote and encourage all athletes to consider getting vaccinated. We are not mandating vaccinations. I just want to be very clear. We have not told any person you must be vaccinated. If the state changes that, then we will certainly come back. If we see concerns, that would be a discussion for the board first, right? But nobody has been mandated. But we would say to people, we do encourage, any of our athletes to be encouraged or to be vaccinated. We, last year, as you know, held a vaccination clinic. Anyone who is interested and would like to do it, we certainly would encourage you to do so. The district would also offer and or refer athletes for free COVID testing for all high-risk sports. So I shared with you last week that the county is now, through City BOCES, developing a protocol where all schools will have access to free testing for students and for staff. And we certainly would encourage people to go get tested. Right now, what we're doing is referring them to the health department who does that testing, and there are a variety of places all around the city that are doing that. So we would encourage and promote testing, especially when kids are in high-risk sports. The district would accept any athlete-related vaccination information that is provided by parents and guardians, and this will not be required for athletes at this time, but we will accept it. We have had parents already who say, my child's vaccinated. Do you want to know? Yes, thank you. We'll take it. We'll accept it. We put it in our files. That information is kept confidentially. So if people want to share that with us, that would be great. That, by the way, helps us, especially when we get into contact tracing matters, right? We already know, and that saves some time for us. Yes?
Mathis, what is the mechanism for sharing that information?
I'm sorry?
What is the mechanism for sharing that information with the district?
So they can share that directly with our health folks, our nurses, or they can share with the coaches, and the coaches will make sure that the medical staff do have that information for sure, okay? The district would also, if we were to do this, we would enforce masking protocols for all athletes, at all times, wherever possible. We know that when you're in aerobic sports, it's difficult to wear a mask. But I would say that our kids did a good job last year. I can recall one game where a team came off the bus. They're a different district, and they had their mask kind of like on their arms. Our kids were on they had their stuff on playing soccer. I had a superintendent call me and say, way to go for your kids, right? Your kids are very responsible. They're being really responsible. So we certainly would encourage and really say to our athletes, hey, get those masks on wherever we possibly can. We'd also do daily temperature checks. Screenings we're doing a little bit different. We talked with Dr. Morgan about screenings, and also we looked at some of the state guidance. We would do it on Mondays only. Right now, we see across the state that really the screenings have not been that effective because people have not been quite honest with respect to the screening results. So we're still going to do some screening to just get a little parameter of where things are, or check for ourselves, but we'll have to watch it. Students and staff who demonstrate any COVID-19 symptoms, we would also ask that they not attend practices and events. We will encourage that strongly. When we see that, when we hear that, when we know anything about it, we will ask children and staff to leave. Now, with respect to spectators, we did talk about that as well. Currently, across the county, there are no real limits at this time with respect to spectators. The inside one is the one that we're going to be most watchful for. Particularly, we have one of our teams going right now, the volleyball, if I remember correctly, that people do like to come. There's a lot of people who want to come for it. But what people are doing right now and across the region is, and actually outside of our region, they are allowing for spectators. However, every spectator inside has to wear a mask. They have to socially distance themselves when attending the events. Families and households are encouraged to sit together. All spectators will be asked to follow through with mitigating strategies as well. When people are outside, they are asked, you can come to the event, but unvaccinated spectators, we're following the guidance from last year, which says if you're not vaccinated, you need to wear a mask when you come to the contest, socially distance yourselves, family and household sitting together. All spectators will be asked to follow, again, those mitigating strategies. Now, we do have a backup. Like for some of those events that we think are going to be really hugely attended, we do have an ability to be able to let in only so many people at a time, right? So for example, one of our gyms has a capacity, I think it was like, 300 or 400 people, if I remember correctly. We can cut that capacity down. And if we have to do that, we can always say to our parents, we need to limit the number of guests. You can bring 2 or 3, but we can't have everybody because we're inside, especially now, given the Delta variant. And if it gets to be real concerning, we will come back to the board, but we can also say to the community, right now, because of the variant, we're going to live stream the event, but we may not be able to have as many spectators as we'd like to, right? Or none, depending on what's happening. But we would come back again and share that with the board. So the above recommendations, by the way, we would let the community know that these recommendations are subject to change at any moment because this is an ongoing pandemic. We don't know how things are going to go. So if we start to see issues, we may pull things back and change things around. So those are the recommendations. Did you have anything else you want to add on those recommendations, Dr.?
That's what we talked about. That's good.
Okay. Any questions, concerns, feedback from the board?
So the first bullet talks about, the New York State Public High School Athletics Association, has determined that everything will go as is.
Yes, they have.
When they made that announcement, they specifically said, we're not rescheduling like we did last year. Football's not moving from fall to spring,
Right.
We're not readjusting our schedule. So as the group that oversees athletics, to say that everything's going makes perfect sense. That's the only thing they do, right? But part of the issue I have with what I'm seeing right now goes to kind of some of the concerns that I heard from the public earlier, especially the ones that came in online. So the American Academy of Pediatrics, CDC says kids need 5 days of education. We're on board. The CDC say, and the American Pediatric, masks. Good, we're gonna do that, all right? We need to sterilize, we need to disinfect when necessary. It's not as rigorous as it was a year ago, but we still need to do that. Okay, so as a board member and parents coming to me saying, we're doing all these because the experts in the field are making these recommendations. And then you've got people that are worried about sending their kids to school in the first place, and they're wondering, why are you not following these same exact procedures when it comes to high-risk sports? When you have kids who can go out and compete with other places, I think of a basketball game. I will not name the team for now. But there was a basketball game last year. The opponents never masked. Everybody was supposed to. Every one of our opponents was supposed to mask. So if we're following all of the experts' guidance on all of these other things that we've outlined, why are we not doing that here?
So you want me to respond? So I think a couple of things. First of all, there is, all of these things are what we consider guidance, recommendations, they're not requirements. And the caveat that we have heard when we're in meetings that has been shared with us is that one size doesn't fit all. You kind of need to recognize where your district is and utilize the guidance wherever you can to try to put into place the best types of programs that you can for your students to ensure health and safety as best you possibly can. I will tell you that the athletic piece has been a time-consuming piece because we want to make sure kids are safe when they're really interacting with sports. And we have spent a lot of time collaborating with a number of colleagues from across the entire region. And I think everyone is looking for a way to still allow some opportunities for athletics, given the social and emotional needs of kids, given the needs for kids to try to still do something that causes them to still have that interaction through athletics, with the caveat that if things don't work out the way we want, that we can pull it back at any time. I do understand your concern. Your point is a valid point and a good one, and I appreciate it. But that's some of the thinking and the mindset behind that. Did you want to share anything else with that, Dr. Morgan?
Unfortunately, our recommendations for our school district, and we've already shown that we've done a better job than others last spring, wearing our mask, and I'm proud of the fact that we did do a better job. And yeah, it'd be nice we could say, if you don't wear the mask, then you forfeit the game, but that's not what the regional is doing. But I think we continue to use our mask, encourage the other coaches, keep encouraging them to do that. If the contact numbers go up, that's going to change the sports right there. So it's going to be a self-defeating by the other schools if they don't do the best they can to prevent spread. And they aren't going to reschedule things. And I think that, there will be a lot of games that are forfeited. You're seeing this in professional sports too, where they're not doing, well, 3 people, on the team, made this game be canceled, so we'll reschedule it. No, you forfeit it if you don't have enough. I think if we start playing a little more black and white in that, then that may motivate the other teams to be as good as we were. It's nice setting an example, and I'm proud that we did do a much better job with mask wearing. And we should commend our coaches and our students for what they did. And I'm sure they didn't like running around with a mask on, but it is something that we can do that can reduce infection. It's not perfect, but anything we can do to reduce infection will let us have more of a normal life. We're not in a normal world yet. This COVID thing is not over. If Lambda comes down and it's worse than the Delta, I'm not sure where we're going to go, but we want to be open. We want to be as close to normal as possible. So to let this do it, anything we can do to reduce the infection is a good thing. And the mask does reduce things. It's clearly shown that. It's not 100%. Nobody ever claimed it was, but it's an improvement. But let's keep showing them we know how to do it in Oswego. We invite you to be as good at it as we are, and be proud of it.
Heather?
Yeah, I also, Jim, I understand your concern, and I understand exactly what you're saying. I think it's very important to take those federal organizations and take their recommendations, but you also have to have good local common sense. We know we had a truancy issue prior to COVID happening. We know that for many kids, sports is the only thing that gets their bodies through the front door. We are mandating 5 days a week in school. We're not giving a virtual option unless you have a medical reason. So you can't, I think it's very difficult then for our local community to say, you have to be here, but we're going to take away those things that draw you in that we know really are very important to some of those kids who find it very difficult to walk through the door. So I just think it's very important to meld the two things, the recommendations from those federal organizations that really aren't considering individual school districts and their conditions, and then what we know about our own local condition.
See, I do understand that, but I think a couple of the issues come to local conditions are based on a lot about spread, right? So if you're in a blue or a yellow, the spread is not as much, and that local condition warrants one thing. And you could say you can adopt this any way you want, but I think what becomes part of the problem in my mind, and I think some people in the audience may be thinking the same thing, one person's common sense is seemingly another person's nonsense nowadays. Honestly, we've become so polarized in how we view some things that it's my way, the wrong way, and there's little in between. And I disagree with that notion. I think there are shades of gray in everything, and we need to appreciate that and appreciate each other in the fact that there are differences of opinion. But again, I'll just go to the point when we're looking at this, and I understand, I am a huge sports fan, right? I think we need to have as much sports. I think we can do more with sports. We can. We can especially get more modified. We can get more down in the younger grades. I think we can do more. But during a pandemic, if we're going to say, the thing that catches my eye here is that we're following almost to the letter, not guidance. It is a guidance, but we're following it to a letter for pretty much everything but this one thing. And that stands out to me. And I appreciate the fact we're going to keep an eye on it, but what I would hate is that we got to close one of these buildings because of this. That's Our kids need normalcy in the classroom. Yes, they need sports, right? But you do it in a way that doesn't impact the number one priority we have, and that's the 5-day-a-week in-person education. And again, I'm not saying I'm against what we're saying, but in my conversations out in the public, this is a glaring discrepancy where some people are saying, well, you're just going to pick and choose. So,
But isn't that the gray area you're referring to, Jim, is that there isn't a black and white, and the reality is, we know the number one thing that's going to affect our 5-day-a-week success, at least in the high school and middle school, is to take away those catch things that kids need to bring them into the buildings. We do have that issue here locally. Maybe other districts don't struggle as much as we do, but we do. And if we're not going to have a virtual option for those kids who are more comfortable at home or have the social anxiety or have those issues, we have to make sure that we're doing what we can to mitigate spread, but to still offer those things that bring them in.
Pam?
I'm sorry, again, I have to go back to last year, how well our coaches and our athletes did with their distancing, their maskings. They followed protocol. Kudos to them. I believe they can do it again. And we just reiterate to them, like we did last year, it's this way or it shuts down. And we don't, there's that part, there's kind of no gray area. It's, you have to follow the guidelines we're given for athletics or they're going to get shut down because numbers are going to go up. Heather's absolutely right. I know a lot of the kids, that's what gets them through that front door every day, is they have that team practice. They have that team match going on. It's a lot of kids in this district really rely on that practice and that event. That's what brings them through the front door. That's what gets them across the stage after 4 years, sometimes 5, and that's okay. We get them across the stage. It's a key piece here. It's just huge. I can't shut it down.
Anybody else? Comments? Good. Can you give him your microphone?
Can we have a mic?
Hi, Zachary. Nice to meet you.
Okay, all good? Okay. I know that everything is difficult for the past 2 years, but as a student, it is really important to me to have the high school experience that I've been waiting for my whole life. This is the biggest moment of my life where I make the most decisions, where I make the best memories, where I make the best friends, where I figure out where my life is going. And I feel that if I have to make some exceptions, like wearing a mask while being in school, I feel like it's worth it. I know it's tough. I know people struggle. But when I think back to last year, finally walking through those doors after virtual learning, I didn't think about having to struggle wearing a mask throughout the class period. I thought, wow, I'm finally back. I'm finally able to enjoy this experience, and I had a great time, and it'd be a shame if it got shut down.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? So, board, I think what we just need to know is, so we've kind of gotten, you have the recommendations. My question is, so we went through each of the parts, and we'll go through in just a moment. Would we have consensus that this would be okay to start with, and if we need to change, we can come back and change things as the year gets started? So I guess I would just need like a consensus yes or no from the board. So if those who are okay, if you could just maybe give me a thumbs up or something. 1, 2, 3.
All right, not an
4,
official vote,
5.
just a consensus. Thumbs up for
So we have
those
1,
who are
2.
okay. And we'll
1, 2, 3,
assume no
4.
thumbs up is a thumbs down.
So I got 5, a majority, but I see a comment. Sir.
Yeah. Where are you? There you
There
are.
you go.
You'll come on. I can do this. The only comment I have is there is no right answer. We're trying to make a right answer, and we're making an educated guess, the best we have with what we have at this point in time. And, I appreciate Zach's perspective and take that into consideration. And how much risk are we willing to take in these situations? Am I comfortable with it? Not really. I'm not. I would love to be 100% sure, but that's not going to happen. But I also understand that we can start down, and we're going to find out the same way we did last year. We start down the road, we watch it. What's our trigger? What's our mechanism to stop? When do we know when positive rates within a team or whatever happens that we're going to shut it down? That we have everything in place, but we have to monitor and test very vigilantly all the time. I just saw the other day where the football team is going out someplace, I think, for a scrimmage with 3 other teams already. And that's going to happen, and before we may even have everything in place. There's a potential cluster. So I have a hard time saying yes, full-throated endorsement, but for where we are right now, I still think we have to move forward, but be vigilant and watch everything.
And I think that is the plan. That's the plan we're recommending now, is that we move forward, but that we'll be vigilant and we'll pull the plug or reverse or go left or right if we have to.
Yes. Okay, all right. So Dr. Morgan, I'm going to let you go unless you have anything else, and then I'm going to run through one last piece with the board here. Thank you, Dr. Morgan, for all your time. And we talk all the time. I call him, and yesterday I called him, and he was in with patients twice. But we talk, and we will continue to discuss board and bring him back and Department of Health officials as well to let you know how things are going.
Yeah.
Sir?
I did have one other question, Dr. Morgan, before you go, relative to monitoring southern schools that have opened already and monitoring their programs. If we can look at those and keep an eye on that relative to the experiences they're having prior to, particularly in the sporting arena, because I know this will evolve, particularly as we get to wrestling in the future and how it's being handled, and just we can look at that data and how if it's been effective or what we can do, but just with all our sports to see what they're doing. And if we see that as a trend also, we use that.
Yes, absolutely. And just sharing with the board, we've already, sports have already begun. Our bands have already started. We do have people who are doing the contact tracing with us and for us, and they're watching everything. So far, we've been very good. We haven't had cases from those activities at this time. Now, that doesn't mean it won't change, and if it does, we'll come back and share it, but we have been watching. Yes.
Just before Dr. Morgan leaves, about the bans, last year there was all this concern about the virus being expelled out of a woodwind instrument or whatever. Is that changed, or are we doing something differently?
So the biggest thing that we have heard right now is making sure that there's spacing for kids when the bands are happening, space them out. I believe it's 6 feet, if I remember correctly, for the instrumental and for the choral. People are asking to have those drop buckets, the spit buckets, where the kids can open their instruments and but really it's just spacing kids out and then watching. And if you have an infection, right, then you kind of go from there, or transmission, basically. We had a really great success last year with the bands and the chorus. However, we don't know how things will go this year because of the Delta variant, but our marching band has already been out there practicing, and they have been moving them out, and the practices are outside, so we're trying to get as many kids outside as much as we can as well. So, any other thoughts on that? Okay. Okay, board, are we good with them? Thank you, Dr. Morgan. All right, so board, I've shared with you all the considerations for the plan. We talked last week about the 5 days a week in person, our schedules, the special education piece being offered per IEPs and support plans in person. Unless there's a special accommodation, we'll do it online. We talked about technology, extracurricular activities, and transportation as a part of our plan. We've talked about the masking, the social distancing requirements, the cleaning and sanitation, the food and nutrition that we will continue to offer breakfast and lunch for all kids, free of charge, the screening and monitoring piece, the social and emotional learning counselors and support folks in classes to help kids, testing protocols that are being developed now through city BOCES, and we'll hopefully have more information soon, contact tracing and case reporting. We've talked about our emergency shutdown piece as a part of our plan. Tonight, we talked about athletics, And then we also talked at our last meeting about additional strategies that we would promote. So if that is acceptable with you and to you, then we have our plan. And I have in front of you all our plan that I shared with you before. And if you just look on page 93 to 95, the athletic information that we went over is in that portion of the plan. And on I kind of marked it with you with the little markers there. Also, the table of contents has been updated as well. So we did put all that in there, and we made sure that we put a caveat in the athletic portion. I think the last sentence talks about if this doesn't work and there's a problem, this can be revised, and we'll come back to do so. Okay? All right, so the public needs to know that up front. So with that said, I guess we'll just need to make sure we're good. Yes?
I just apologize if this is in any way redundant from last year or last meeting, but the technology piece is in place if there is like a large spread quarantine.
Yes.
But let's just say somebody's child has to be quarantined because a parent was exposed at work or whatever. Is the virtual
Yes.
remote learning, even in high school, going to be offered to that specific
Yes.
child in all of their classes?
Yes, so what we did in the plan for emergency shutdown or quarantining, what we did was, let's say a kid gets quarantined from their classroom or a group of children. What they can do is the next day go on, flip on, they have their computers and turn right on, and they can live stream into the classroom. We didn't want the kids getting behind 10 to 14 days. And a lot of times kids are quarantined and they don't really have symptoms. So they can just turn on their screen and they can watch the classroom. Within the next 24 hours, the teacher will get stuff kind of loaded up and into the Google Classroom so kids can go on and do it if they need to. If they're sick, we prefer for them to take care of themselves. And then when you're all better, let us know, and we will get you either back on live stream or we'll get a tutor or whatever it is that you need. But that is the piece. If whole classrooms or schools are shut down, the emergency plan is those classrooms or those schools will go remote virtual, full scale. The schedule that they'll follow is their regular schedule during the daytime, right? So whatever they have at normal time, they should just get on and follow that schedule. And if there are extenuating circumstances, parents and students should just reach out to their principals and their teachers, let them know, and we'll work with them one at a time. So yes, and again, if the whole school goes down or the whole district, everybody, the emergency plan is, by the way, go remote and virtual. So those are our plans, and they are in the plan, yes. There's a whole section in the plan on shutdown. Okay. Okay, so the question is, are we good? Can I get a consensus that we are good with the plan? The board, all those who are good, can I just get a thumbs up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those who are not good, thumbs up. I guess it's all good. So the majority would have it. Are we okay? Okay. So then just lastly, board, the next steps is we will make sure that this information is revised. We will post this, we'll start to post this now out to our website. We'll get it out there so people can see it. We'll put it out to the public. And then our goal is to implement the plan with integrity. So this is the draft and the updated version. I have it here on the desk with the nice graphics and things on it, but we just wanted to make sure that was set first. Okay. With that said, board, that's all that I have this evening. I'm all set. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the consent agenda. Minutes of the regular board meeting of July 13th, 2021. Claims auditor report, board report, May 2021. Claims auditor report of June 2021. Oswego High School extra classroom activities report, June 2021. Oswego High School extra classroom activities club's year-end report, 2020 to 2021. Treasurer's Consolidated Report, June 2021, and the Special Education Board Report of August 24th, 2021. If I could have a motion, please?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is curriculum with Carrie Plass.
Sorry. Can you hear me? Yep. The two items under curriculum for tonight are both related to the ESSA accountability identification. First is the school comprehension education plan for Oswego Middle School. And then the second one is the district comprehensive improvement plan. Both were aligned to the strategic plan that we just completed in June, and they will be used to help us get off the identification. So the middle school was already approved by the state, and the district has to be approved by the board.
Could I have a motion, please?
I'll move it.
I'm sorry, Jim? Was it Jim? Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is personnel with Dr. Sweeney.
A, we have a support staff recommendation for a retirement for Barbara Fontana from Charles E. Riley School. Whereas Barbara Fontana was employed continuously by the Oswego City School District from May 1985 until December 2021. And whereas Mrs. Fontana admirably served the students and the staff of the Oswego City School District with her full commitment to her responsibilities as both a typist and senior typist, and worked in partnership with fellow employees and with her full service and dedication to the best interests of all the students of the Oswego City School District. Now therefore be it resolved that our school district recognizes the service of Mrs. Fontana as an asset to the students and staff, and we express gratitude and sincere appreciation for her 36 and a half years of service.
Could I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Just like to thank Mrs. Fontana for her 36 and a half years of service to the district, and I hope she enjoys her retirement.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
The remainder of my agenda items I'll group by category. So the first category group are professional staff recommendations for our resignations, hirings, and appointments. And those are items B through I. As presented, are there any questions?
I have just one question, Heidi.
Sure.
I'm just curious, certification status of INI, what does that mean?
Initial?
This is for H.
Yep, so folks are typically in an initial certification status,
Oh, it's initial.
INI,
Okay.
as they move through, yes, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Items B through I, could I have a motion? Move it. Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
The next category, our professional recommendations for extra compensatory, and those are items J through V. J through V. V is in Victor.
Could I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
You'd have to make a motion to split it.
Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you.
Actually, I'd like to make a motion to split the group. That item U be separated out. I'd actually like to table U in the interest of time, but I don't think I can do that part yet. My first motion is to separate the group, to take U away from J through V as in Victor.
Okay, so she has made a motion to remove U and consider it separately. So we have one motion, we just need a second. I will second that. Any discussion on just that part? Okay, so we need to vote on that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Well,
Okay, so we have now removed it, and you want to do anything further with it?
I
or
would
just
like
con-
to now
vote on
make a
something?
motion to table item U to the next meeting in the interest of time because it will take an executive session for some discussion.
I will second that. Is there any discussion?
Can we have that executive session here at the end of this meeting? Do we already plan on having an executive session at the end of this meeting, Dr. Calvin? So.
We do have an executive session.
Could we at least do that at the end of this one so we know that it would not hold up the next meeting? I just don't want this to keep carrying on.
Right. Yeah.
That's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
The answer to your question, Jim, was yes.
Okay, so now you're voting on J through V minus U.
Quite an equation.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, the next category is, they are our support staff recommendations, resignations, appointments, permanent appointments, W through D, as in dog.
Could I have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I just would like to clarify on the first food service helper part-time. Is it CER or KPS that she's going to? Both were in backup.
Oh, Bonnie Albright?
Yeah.
I'm just looking. I know. She's moving to CER to replace an employee who has resigned.
Perfect. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And then my last item, E, our substitute and temporary employees. This is also inclusive of our annual appointment of our various substitutes. There will be more at the next meeting. We're still waiting for paperwork to be returned from different employees.
Motion, please.
I'll move it.
Second?
I'll second.
I just have a question. Are we going to go back to in-home tutors then? I know we had a hiatus on those. So are we returning to in-home tutors?
Yes, so Dr. Duffy will consider each individual situation. Some of our folks will tutor perhaps a group who may be remote for various reasons, but then we would also provide in-person tutoring, whether it's in the home or in the school. Sometimes it's in the school library.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is finance with Nancy Squires.
I'm going to group as well. A and B are budget transfers, and C through E are donations to Fitzhugh Park School. So that would be A through E.
Items A through E, could I have a motion?
I'll
Move
make
it.
the motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Pam? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
F is our contract for special legal counsel with Ferrara Fiorenza for 2021 to 22, as presented.
Could I have a motion for item F?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Tom? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
G is an MOU with the town of Minetto for a tax certiorari case for $25,000 for help for legal fees, and this is for Erie Boulevard hydropower.
Motion for item G.
I'll move it.
Second.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Is that a normal agreement between parties to split the legal fees on the tax certiorari like that?
We've done this in the past with this one company, with the town of Minetto.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
H through O are annual agreements as presented. If there's any questions on those.
Items H through O, could I have a motion?
Move it.
Second.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
P through Y are annual maintenance agreements as presented.
Motion?
Move it.
Second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Z is an agreement with the group management services as presented.
Motion?
Move it.
Second. Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And AA through CC are the independent audit reports and corrective action plans as presented.
Motion? Item AA to CC.
I'll move it.
Second. Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next on the agenda is the student representative discussion, and this is Zachary DeMont. That is our new
Welcome, Zach.
student representative this year.
Welcome aboard, Zach.
Welcome, Zach. Can you tell us a little about yourself?
Yes. Okay. Yep, I joined student council in 10th grade. Enjoyed it ever since, and for my senior year, I decided to run for president, which also included being a representative of the school board. And I enjoy that I get a say in things that have to deal with me. And I get to witness everybody having discussions, and it all comes back to my classmates, our school. It all affects me, and I think it's really cool that I can have a say in what happens during my school year. Thank
And
you.
just know this board takes your input very, very seriously. I don't know if you watched any of the meetings from last year, but Zeta did a really nice job of representing your class, the whole school, and we're looking forward to your representation as well. We know you'll do an excellent job. So
Thank you. Yeah, I plan to express my opinions in the future.
excellent.
Next on the agenda is items from board members. Would there be any items tonight?
You know, I always have a couple. I would like to just give a shout out and a kudos to a Minetto community member and parent, so he would be a Minetto home and school member. Jarrett Warndorf has some huge fundraising efforts for the Minetto playground. He's done a couple of big things that I've read in the paper. So yeah, kudos. Thank you, Jarrett. We appreciate your help, and hopefully we can get a new playground out there at Minetto. And as always, our faculty and staff, we appreciate them. All they do, those that are off, enjoy their last couple of weeks of summer. Get ready for a great new school year ahead. Thanks.
I have two things. One is, Jim, did you have something?
Please, go first.
I'll do one of my things, then you, and then we'll do it that way. I think some people are having trouble with the acoustics in this room. I think it's hard to hear, especially with the masks. We really don't want to miss anything anyone is saying, so I'm just wondering if maybe we can kind of brainstorm that issue a little bit. I don't know if we can do something different with speakers or maybe just consider a different location. I'm not sure. Sean had input on
This
that.
might be
Strange, but the two times we've been sitting here, I think it's been really hard to hear. And the time that we were over there, it was a lot better.
Because that
Okay, I think acoustics
microphone's
are-
pointing that way. So I'm hoping you can hear well.
Do you guys hear well?
Yeah. We had TJ and the guys in. We can certainly work on some other things. We'll do some testing out. We put some speakers here and tried to do some things a little different, but we can certainly go back to the drawing board, try it again.
Some of us are old and we just need a little help with hearing. Okay, thank you. Go, Jim.
Yeah, so what I wanted to talk about is the floor to the public. When we were virtual, we set up a way to have people put in their comments, and it was necessary because we were virtual. But hearing that we had a bunch of comments come in virtually today, I'm just wondering how we want to approach that. We've always been, you need to show up to talk, and we don't read things. And I didn't want to say anything at the beginning because this is an important time. You know, we're making some big decisions, and I do think we need to hear from everybody as much as possible. But I do think going forward, we need to be clear about whether we're going to take comments only from the floor or we're also going to allow them in virtually, because that's not our standard practice outside of virtual, which we're not allowed to go, we're not in an emergency. So we have to meet in person. I think the people, personally, I think the people should be here to speak. So.
Yeah, is there something though legally precluding us from accepting? Because the one thing I'm sensitive to is there are people who have like real anxiety about getting up in front of people and, allowing a forum for them to speak their mind without having to public speak. I don't know how I think that's important, but on the other hand, I can also see where it's a slippery slope. So I'm just curious if we could pursue if there's legalities against it. Tom? Okay.
Sure, I can ask Tom tomorrow on that question, for sure.
Thank you. And I think Tom Chapa.
Well, I was going to say the other thing too is a lot of the questions that we've seen there have been answered at other meetings because some of them were from July, I think. So if we would address them in between, we wouldn't have to do that. The other thing we could do is if someone had a problem public speaking but wanted it read, they could be here and then we could read it into the record. That'd be one potential solution, but then everybody would come here as opposed to sending them in virtually. Do you know what I mean?
Well, the one reason I bring it up is because I know we have had a lot of, well, I wouldn't say a lot. I know there have been individuals from outside of our district who have come to talk to us, and I do think it's important that we hear different perspectives, and by interpretations of state ed law, we need to allow the public at large, right? We need, whether you're a resident of this district or not, we need to allow you the time on the floor. Having that virtual, we are possibly setting ourselves up with a flood of emails, comments that don't come from our constituents, which again, we legally need to let them be here, but if they're physically standing here, they put in the effort. That's just my thought. But thank you for speaking to our council, Dr. Calvin. We'll see what Mr. Buckle has to say. Sure.
Heather, may I say something?
Of course.
Can everybody hear me?
No, you got to put that right up to your lips.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. As I have sat here the last two meetings, I have hearing aids, which should be helping me, but I never hear a word you're saying, Mathis. When you guys speak down there, it's all, I can't pick out the sounds. Can we talk about going back to where we were with our board meetings?
We were just talking about that.
See, yeah. And I'm lost.
That's
I
case in
really,
point,
it's so
yeah.
frustrating to me.
Yeah, we're going to pursue either changing acoustics or other location.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to be viable. I really don't.
Okay.
And I want to hear.
Absolutely. That's very important. Thank you, Linda.
Any other items from the board?
The only other thing I just wanted to say before we close is I know we approved the plan. I appreciate all the work that was put into this plan. I absolutely know it was hours and hours and hours of work. So I just want to put in another plug for not disregarding the input we got about virtual learning. I do think there's a component of our school district. If there's one thing that is research-based about education, it's that we all learn differently. We all need different things. And in a public school system, it's very hard not to just generalize and do what's best for the majority. But I think we're really tasked with meeting individual needs, and that's sound education. So if there are really those kids out there who really thrived last year, were on high honors, for the first time we're excited about education, I think we need to not disregard that regardless of their medical condition. We need to really hear that and listen to that and maybe incorporate that into how we proceed. This is a reopening plan. I think it's fantastic, but I don't think we should disregard what we're hearing about those kids.
At this time, the board members, if I could get a motion for you to move to executive session for reasons of,
To discuss negotiations, COESA and also AAP, and also to discuss the performance of a particular staff member.
okay, could I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Will there be a need for a vote after executive session?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You may move to the library, which is set up for your executive session.